right, it is episode 4 of the press break. Episode 2 of, technically being the press break. But 4th episode of our little show here. I'm Jamie Steyer Johnson alongside Chelsea Leite and Tyler DeLuca. Thanks so much for joining us once again. Folks, we are wrapping up the regular season. We are approaching the playoffs. We have talked a lot about the playoffs. We will get into that a little bit, but we also have some extremely exciting things coming up in the world of the WNBA. I say coming up. I'm not going to get specific because the WNBA generally chooses not to be specific.
It'll happen when they feel like it. They vibe, so we're gonna vibe, I guess.
They're out there. They're just kind of taking the temperatures, seeing what the people are asking for. Perhaps, I don't know. It very much is vibe based. That's the case with a lot of the W, and that is, of course, to say the WNBA awards are coming. Yep. The postseason award, or regular season, I guess, sort of post regular season.
Who knows? I don't. No dates, no definitions. Just vibes.
Oh, we're gonna get into the definitions as well, but we've got a whole lot to talk about there. I'm gonna start out with a fairly quick one, which is Rookie of the Year. It's locked up. There's been a whole lot of discussion. We talked about this a little bit last week, how it very well could have been more of a race than it was, with Cam Brink going out early and then Angel Reese getting hurt here late. Caitlin had separated herself by that point, but the person that I wanted to specifically highlight in regards to the Rookie of the Year race is Rickea Jackson. I just think she has come so far this season. She is going to be a star. She has been incredible. If she hadn't had to claw her way off of the bench to start the season for question mark reason, I do think that we would potentially be having a different discussion right now. Part of that being also the Sparks have struggled. So probably was never going to be much of a discussion, and that's not even to get into the fact that this is voted on, and so there's narratives, whatever. But I wanted to shout out Rickea Jackson in regards to that conversation, and what could have been, what might have been, but definitely she will be in the conversation for a whole lot of awards going forward. Yeah. You guys have any thoughts on Rookie of the Year?
Yeah, I mean, I know with Rickea, specifically, seeing her, I think it was, I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure I saw the Sparks posted, the 500 plus points as a rookie.
Yes.
And it's it's her and Candace. That's the company, and all the other records, it's her, Candace, and that's the company you're keeping.
Which is the classic, right?
Right, of course it's Candace.
Since.
Yeah, of course it's Candace. But I've been calling Rickea, that's Pro Ready Rickea. I've been calling her that for 2 years now. And it's what she showed up and has done. I to your point, I wish she would have been able to showcase that earlier in the season. But I mean, the Sparks, I can't wait to see what draft pick they end up with and who they're being able to add to this core, because I saw Cam Brink is still top 15 in blocks right now, even having not played for months and months at this point. Hey, man, so I completely agree. I definitely think Caitlin has certainly pulled away in the race and has been pulled away in my eyes for a while now. But I mean, the Rookie of the Year race was. I mean, like I said, we haven't had a Rookie of the Year race, a genuine race, since Fee, I think. One rookie, maybe, was Fee and Arike, I think it was that year. Maybe since then, an actual race. So, just because rookies don't get playing time, really. So, this whole rookie class has been fun to watch. But, yeah, I certainly wish Rickea would have been able to get off the blocks a little bit sooner for the Sparks and be able to produce.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion's the same as I think it was last week when we were talking about Cam Brink and if she didn't get injured and all that stuff. I do think she would have been in there as well, and even up there with Angel and Caitlin, because Tyler just said, she's still. I saw that stat too. It was top whatever in blocks, and she hasn't played since June. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I it's now it's what could have been. But at the same time, Caitlin was always gonna have this season, so it's would they have been able to match up to it? I don't know. It would have been fun to see. So I am very curious about the all rookie team.
Yes.
Again, I saw that. I said this in previous weeks, because you have all of these random not random, but like all these European players that came and like are rookies technically because they like, haven't played in the WNBA. So like Leonie Fibich and Julie Van Loo are in the mix. Aaliyah Edwards, I think, just to, put a little Canada in there. I do think Aaliyah Edwards has a shot. Rakia obviously should be there. And then you have obviously like Caitlin Angel. And there's just so many good rookies. Like I think this class, we were just so like treated with this incredible rookie class that like a lot of them did get a lot of minutes too. It was like a cool shifting kind of era where the rookies did get a lot of time. And then, there's Camilla, there's so many people that you could name could potentially be on this all rookie team. And there's only one, like there's with all WNBA, they go further into the rounds, but there's only one all rookie team. So
yeah, I was certainly going to bring that up because we were discussing right before we started recording. We are going to do all WNBA picks, but not for another episode or two. Based on last year's pace, we should have several weeks before those are coming out. And so we will definitely get into all rookie there. There's some that are very much locks, but then there's maybe a couple spots that are up for grabs. And especially as you talk about those European players, I do think we get at least one non-traditional rookie that's going to slide in there. So super interested to see what you guys have to say about that. But we will take a little bit more time to do some research on that. So moving right along here, here it is. You've been waiting. We've been teasing it. It's time. It's the Chelsea and Jamie Power Hour. We're gonna try to keep it to not an hour, but there's seriously no.
I'm starting the clock now.
And that is, of course, folks. We're gonna get into the most improved player race. First of all, I am now like more irritated than I was 24 to 48 hours ago just with the whole situation because of the fact that like most improved player doesn't mean anything in the WNBA. Like it's literally just like
I'm ready for this point.
Yeah, it's so like nonsensical. There's no strict criteria, and so you have like a weird catch-all for like you probably deserve an award, but it's probably not like MVP, but you maybe are better. What I have found, so I am like very much a numbers.
I think it just needs to be named something different.
Yeah, or we also need a comeback player. Like I think Tyler maybe said that last week. Like
yes.
that's a huge thing. That's kind of like top of my list, but I'm a super number-based person because I am an analyst. I love to watch the game. I love to see what I'm seeing, but I then want to check myself because I know that I have biases. And so I'm looking for data to either prove or disprove what I'm seeing. When I was digging into numbers, there's so many people who have been most improved player with fairly little statistical improvement. It's either you were injured and you came back and you were better, which, yes, deserves to be recognized. That would be a comeback player.
Yep.
Or you have people who see increased minutes, and as a result, their statistics go up, but it's proportional to their increase in minutes. And so the thing that people aren't doing and don't tend to do is normalize your results. And so that's why, like, when I was going in on Her Hoop stats, it's so useful that they have everything in per 40s as an option. And so I was going in there, and my almost biggest takeaway is that a lot of people's number one for most improved player is Dijonai Carrington. She does not deserve most improved player because she was so undervalued last year. She was so undervalued last year. So the narrative is that she's more important this year. She is extremely valuable to a very good Connecticut Sun team. But guess what? She was last year as well. Like, I'm looking at it here. Her player efficiency rating has actually gone down just a touch. It was 14.2 last year. It's 14 this year. That's still solid, but it's down. She was efficient last year. Her usage rate is down 1% this year. She still has a nearly 23% usage rate, so she's still really crucial when she's in there. Her points per 40 are down this year. She's playing more, so her actual points are up. Her rebounds, a touchdown. Her assists are a touchdown per 40. She has more steals per 40, so she's improved that. But, I mean, so much of it comes down to the fact that she's playing more minutes. And so that I do think that, she would and will absolutely be a deserving winner. I do think she gets it. I think Dearica Hamby's right in there as well. But that's my biggest takeaway, is that she was so severely undervalued last year. Now, I'm going to keep my Bridget thing fairly short so that Chelsea can also jump in. But for my numbers, I really wanted to get into win share. I know that there's a number of voters who discuss that heavily. Bridget's got 4 win share already this year. There's a couple of games left of the season. But when you're talking most improved, you want to compare to last year. That's my argument against Dijonai, right? So last year, Bridget had a 0.6 win share. This year she has a 4, and there's still a couple games left in the season. That puts her in, it's not exact, but it's as best as I can do with 2 hours and the Her Hoop Stats database. That is top 10 biggest jumps year over year in win share ever. Like, to go from less than 1, where, I mean, she was there, she contributed, but you were not putting wins on her shoulders. This year, she is a significant contributor. Yes, again, her minutes are up, but this is out of proportion with the increase in minutes. And her player efficiency rating nearly doubled. 7.7 last year, 14 this year. Like, I surprised myself with some of the findings. I thought that the bias was going to be stronger. And there's other really good candidates as well that I'm going to hold off on because I want to not just make this my own monologue. But I think that she absolutely deserves more credit than she's getting in a lot of cases nationally. I know that I think ESPN maybe just put out their preview and she was one of the 3 that they mentioned. So shout out there. I know there's people who do the work who are in there, but like so much of this is narratives based, and it's a shame she's not getting mentioned more because some of the improvement she's seeing and some of the statistics she's putting up, she's also like top less than 50 all time as far as highest offensive rating and lowest defensive rating. I think it's pretty mind blowing to have that, and that's part of why Minnesota has been so good, because they are like maximizing their talent, and that's a conversation for like 1 or 2 awards down from here, I think.
Yeah. Chelsea, go ahead and get your stuff off.
No, I mean, I will say that I did say, I think it was ESPNW their writer posted all of their picks for all of the awards, and Bridget did get most improved on that list. So maybe starting to get in the conversation. But the thing for me with Bridget this year, which has like just kind of knocked me away, is looking at her efficiency numbers, like looking at the percentage in which she's shooting both from the field and from 3 is just nuts. Like literally the other day, she shot like over 70% from like 3-point distance. I was looking at the numbers takes I was writing about her, and she, in the Commissioner's Cup game, which like should have been the MVP of that game.
Oh,
whole other conversation that if we had this 2 months ago, we would have got into. But she should have been the MVP of the Commissioner's Cup game. That's a whole other thing. Kind of sad those stats don't count for the regular season, because then her season stats would have been even better. But the thing for me is that, like, and a lot of times that I've watched Bridget over the last couple of years, don't get me wrong, I watch a lot of Minnesota Lynx, but I also watch her a lot on the Canadian national team. Mm-hmm. And the thing that team has really struggled with in the past couple of years is 3-point shooting. And when I watched Bridget in the Paris Olympics, as opposed to even like the qualifiers or the World Cup in 2022, like her shooting efficiency has just gotten so much better. And you can tell that she even looks more confident on the court, which I think is like a testament to the amount of trust that Cheryl Reeve puts in her. Because like even last year when Minnesota came here before the Toronto WNBA game when it was the Sky versus the Lynx, I remember asking Cheryl Reeve about Bridget Carleton and, you know, what she brings to the team. And Cheryl made a huge point to say, like, how much she trusts Bridget Carleton on the court, how much she knows she's going to go out there. And I think that trust just, like, brings confidence in players. Like, we talk about it all the time about how coaches have a huge part in these kind of, like, boosts that you see from players. And that's something that I've seen in her play as well. It's like she's not only surrounded by these great players like Nafisa, Kayla McBride. I think it's just kind of like the pressure is off a little bit more. Like, you just see her playing a bit more free than I think she has in the past couple of years. And I do think because the last few years she's kind of reached that cusp where she's transitioning from like young player to now like veteran. And this is kind of the time that if you start falling off in stats, you're going to start falling off of these short rosters. And she just really like maximized on that moment and has become essential to this Minnesota Lynx team that's incredibly deep when you think about, you know, just their starting lineup alone and then all the power they have coming off the bench. And yeah, I think when we're thinking about these awards that, again, like don't really have much definition to them, what I was saying before about changing the name, I think instead of most improved, they should call it like breakout player of the year, because
that's fair.
Then, instead of going into these little like how much have you improved year by year or how much have you improved from last year, if you split it up into like a comeback player of the year and a breakout player of the year, then you can give those comeback players their moment, but also give people who have completely like broken out of their maybe like young player end of the roster rut or like have come off the bench and have now, you know, broken out into like a very serious either role player or starter or whatever they end up being, I think is more like better defined to the like standards that we hold this award to. Either way, I think Bridget deserves it. I don't know, maybe Jamie and I are just being like homers over here, you know, with the Iowa State / Canada connection. But no, I just think that it's really fun to see her. Like, you can see the joy that she's playing with, and you can see how much her teammates are pumped that she's shooting like that. And like, it's just, some of the numbers are nuts. And even at the Olympics, like she was shooting the same at the Olympics. She didn't like, she's one of these players that didn't really have an Olympic break. She was Canada's best player in the Olympics. Like that's
even on its Canada team that struggled a lot, like she still was getting stuff done.
They were bad, but she was the like silver lining of that team. And she was, even when they knew that they probably weren't going to make it, she was still balling. And like, yeah, it's exciting to know that like they're going to build around her in the future. It's exciting to know that she like has a steady place on this Minnesota Lynx team where she's like valued and where, you know, her coach really trusts her. And it's just like great to see these Canadian players really thrive, like from my perspective. And the last thing that I'll say is that she's also breaking a ton of Canadians in the WNBA records. So she just broke Tammy Sutton-Brown's steals record. I also saw another stat today where she the only two players in WNBA history who have above, I think it's like 66% from 3-point range in 8 games in a season is her and Cheryl Swoops. So,
all right,
solid company.
Yeah,
solid company.
So that's my take on Bridget Carleton. Again, a little bit of Homer energy in there because she's Canadian, but
that's why we get the numbers. We back it up.
We back it up with the numbers, but I do think she has a really good case, and I think a lot of the people who vote for this award or these awards in general are those people who kind of go and look at not only the stats but like how the teams are doing and like how, like, I think they dig into these things that we're talking about, all these factors. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Dijonai won because, again, she's had a fantastic year as well, and I don't think it would be the wrong choice per se, but I do think that if we're talking about, like, these factors that we've been talking about, shooting, efficiency, overall impact on a team, I do think Bridget has a little bit more of the edge, but I don't have to
all right.
All right.
So here's the thing. I love, like, I think that this is a much closer race than it has kind of been voiced, I feel like, on like kind of social media and everything. So I have no issue if Bridget was to win it. I have zero issue with it at all. I am gonna make the Dijonai Carrington argument though. Okay, I am gonna make it. First off, though, I want to applaud us for understanding the essence of most improved player, because last year, Jordan Canada not winning that is that. And so here's the thing, and because Jamie, you mentioned Hamby as well. Hamby has been fantastic this season. The stats have gone up this season. Records broken with the Sparks. Like there is absolutely something there. However, Dearica Hamby is stamped. And to me, I want my most improved player getting out the mud and establishing themselves, especially in a league like this, where it is so cutthroat. If you can establish yourself as a player in the 144, that is improvement to me on one level. Like that is a part of an MIP case to me. And so for Dijonai Carrington, obviously the minutes have gone up, the stats have gone up. So I'm not even like going to look directly at that. The thing that makes the case for me the most is that the Connecticut Sun are now, and this, you're going to have to walk with me here. The Connecticut Sun, I feel like, are now more dangerous than they have ever been. And the reason I say this is because of the improvement that Dijonai Carrington has made this season, moving into that starting role. They were able to confidently make the trade for Marina Mabry and being able to put them together as a duo. Now, the record and everything, the Connecticut Sun on paper, like with the numbers of wins and losses, they are not the best that this core of the Connecticut Sun have been. But because of the duo of Mabry and Dijonai, I think they have the chance to make more noise than they maybe have ever made in the playoffs. Am I exactly predicting that? I don't know, because I don't exactly trust Connecticut. But in the sense of that, the improvement that she has been able to make has allowed them to make a move like that. And that is because of the perimeter defense that you're able to see and the impact that she's able to have on that. And I think, obviously, the stats have gone up, and I think it's very easy to, stats have gone up, minutes have gone up. She's averaging several career highs across the board on her stats. But I think that's just kind of naturally going to happen a lot of the time when you move into that starting role and everything. But it's just seeing a sense of, when you're watching the games, the comfortability that she has on the offensive side of the ball that I feel like hadn't always been there. And I think a lot of that was just because not really having a completely established role coming off the bench. It was kind of hit or miss at times, I felt like, where we were kind of asking, like, where is Dijonai? And just because she wasn't in the minutes. So now seeing her into that role where she's guarding the best player on the perimeter every night. And that's a team that has some defenders on there, and they're giving it to Dijonai.
Yeah.
And so to me, that is kind of the point that hammers home for me. Like, obviously the stats go up with the minutes go up, which isn't a given by any means, but like it certainly is a causation. But to me, it's just the impact that she's been able to have in making and helping make the Sun more well-rounded than they have ever been. Across the board. And that's where it hits home for me a lot. I think Ty Harris also has a pretty solid case from, if we're looking at Connecticut. I think it's kind of fallen off since Mabry came in. But I think going into this, I think either of them could have been in the running for it, but I think Dijonai kind of takes the lead once Mabry comes into Connecticut. But that's for me where Dijonai has hit home the most for me, is the doors and the variation that she has allowed the Sun to have on their roster this season because of the trust that they have in Dijonai. And I think a lot of that is an opportunity-based thing, and I think that's a lot of what goes into most improved player for me. It's just like, sometimes it's just about getting the opportunity. Because I don't think people that knew Dijonai going into the season, I don't think anyone's really surprised by this, And that's where the weird thing of like, if you're stamped or not, to me, because like Satu last year, stamped. Hamby this year, stamped. Dijonai was like the ball knowers player. It was like, if you know Dijonai. We saw this in college. We've seen this with the Connecticut Sun off the bench. Yeah. Now it's an opportunity thing. And I think that she sees the opportunity, and I think it's enough to be rewarded for it. But I do think 100% to y'all's point, this is a much closer race than I feel like has kind of been given credit for off the vibes of social media and everything, and kind of how people have talked about it.
Yeah. Also, I feel like we have to mention, like, real ones will know that Dijonai Carrington was the absolute steal of her draft. And that draft still annoys me so much, because you think about Dijonai, who is playing at such a great level for Connecticut, and obviously everybody lands where they have to. It's less about order than it is about fit. But, like, you think about that year and the fact that the number one draft pick of that year isn't even in the league anymore. Mm-hmm. And that
redraft will go crazy. And that's also kind of part of it. Is like for me, like, I keep going back to last year with it, but like Jordan Canada was on a training camp contract and became a bona fide starter, And so I don't think it was an immediate jump in the way Dijonai has had kind of a build towards this season. And so maybe I'm more like kind of rewarding the build more so like in my head right now, and now like we're seeing it come to fruition.
Yeah.
And like maybe that's me just feeling like, as someone who was asking where was Dijonai in times where she wasn't getting the minutes, maybe this is me just feeling like vindicated, you know, like I don't know, but to me, the impact that she's had, the flexibility that she's given the Sun, would give her my vote. But Bridget has been fantastic this season too.
All right, let me give my very quick replies to various points made, and we will move on.
Yes.
So number one, I like breakout player because I feel like that would also account for if you did see an increase of minutes, and that was a big part of it, that would account for that, and I wouldn't have a problem with that whatsoever. So I really like that. Two, Bridget, I feel like another big part in her jump has been that for the past couple of years, she's like hung her hat on defense, which was a big adaptation she made when she came to the league, because she was great at Iowa State. She's not who you would have called a lockdown defender. Like, she was solid. She was very versatile, but like it took a big jump. And so having players around her that are also a lot more capable defensively, so taking the leap in team defense, has had such a huge positive impact on her individual offense, which I think is like just crazy to see. She's got more energy. Last year, she'd be running around like a chicken with her head cut off, trying to cover for people. Yeah. And there were some possessions where it got wild. So, finally, my final rebuttal on the Dijonai Carrington versus Bridget would be the overall ratings. The net ratings for Bridget are more positive, but that's because the offensive ratings are higher. That's going to be a lot in part because of the Lynx offense. And so I'm going to take that out of it. If you look at the offensive and defensive rating differential for each of them for the time when they're on the court versus the time that they're off the court, Dijonai Carrington, the off-court time, when Dijonai's on the court versus when she's off the court, they are actually 4.8 points better when she's off offensively. And this is weird. And this has to be a game situation thing. They're actually 5.2 points worse defensively with her on the court.
That feels so like, that's crazy to me.
Yeah. No, so, and that's overall. So I don't know. Obviously she's one who's going to be in against very good offensive players and is going to be guarding. So maybe when they pull the best offensive player, that's when she's getting her breaks. But that was very stark to me, because on the other side of things, for Bridget, when she's in the game, they're 7.8 points better offensively, and they're 2.1 points better defensively. So again, there's game script stuff. The numbers aren't everything, but it's a lot. I wouldn't want to be a voter, is all I'm saying.
Yeah,
like I said, I love the Bridget case too. Like if Bridget was to win it, there'd be no quarrel from me at all.
It's more that there's so many interesting numbers that I could sit here and talk about forever. So I guess we're on the right network, right?
There we go.
So moving on, let's go here to a quick hitter, which is Defensive Player of the Year. I sort of alluded to it with the increase in the Lynx overall defensive efficiency. But it sounds like the three of us have a similar kind of idea for Defensive Player of the Year. And then there is one big name that is also going to be right in there. The top two that I don't know if you guys have really seen much else anymore. I know at one point Ezzy Magmagor, of course, had been discussed. I know Dijonai had been discussed. I don't really think she's in there as much anymore. The names I'm seeing, Nafisa Collier and Asia Wilson.
Yeah. Stop me if you've heard that before when it comes to award conversations this year.
Yeah.
I mean, those are two anchors, you know, like, and I think a big part of it for me is that Fee has stepped up literally across the board this season, like both sides of the ball. But on the defensive side, especially, like the blocks and steal counts that she's able to get on an individual level when you look at the individual statistics, and also the fact that she's anchoring this Lynx defense, which is so incredibly solid.
Like, all of them are
so, and obviously Fee doesn't account for all of that by any means, but being able to anchor that and have that. So like you have the team aspect, you have the individual aspect of it. Like the Aces defense, I would say as a whole is average at best. And that's at best.
Yeah.
The numbers are rough on that one.
Yeah. So I like
that's where Aoife's carrying them, where Nafisa is just helping them all get better.
Yeah, and so for me, I give it to Fee, like just the step up that she's had this season. But this is another one where like if you gave it to Asia, like I completely understand. But I just kind of feel like the Aces defense just hasn't been what it's been. I think a lot of it has to do with the switching on the perimeter. But also like I don't think Asia has put as much energy into the defensive side of the ball this season compared to other seasons because she has to do so much on offense, like at so many points this season. Where I don't think it's a drop off in talent or ability from Asia. I think it's a difference in like kind of energy and how much is going in on each side of the ball. Where I think Fee has been able to be a bit more balanced with that. So I would give it to Fee personally. But listen, there's not many arguments you can make against Asia Wilson I'm going to disagree with this season either. So I understand both sides of it, but Fee would get my vote.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they're very close in terms of like who's worthy of it. I think it comes down to the fact where, Asia Wilson's she's literally doing everything on the court for the Aces, and their defense as a whole has really struggled this year. And you've seen it when they play the Minnesota Lynx, when they play the Liberty, like these teams that have really powerful offenses, they're just not able to hold them or able to get stops, able to let Asia, like these games where Asia's scoring like 40 points, it's not because they're blowing other teams out of the water.
Yeah.
If she doesn't score 40 points, they're not going to win.
Yeah.
So, or like not have a chance to win. And some of the times they lose those games.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think like, while Asia Wilson is definitely like top 2 of this defensive player of the year conversation as a whole, Nafisa kind of has the edge for me because she is leading a cohesive defense on a team that you're not worried about when it comes to having to get stops and defend. And her defense is very directly turning into her increased offense. And I've seen so many times where I've watched the Lynx this season where that saved them in close game situations. And it was Nafisa Collier stepping up on the defense that got them the win on the other side. So like, for me, it's like, yes, Asia Wilson is arguably top whatever in defensive players of all time, like whatever, we can spend a whole other podcast episode talking about that. But I think this is one of these awards where you do kind of have to look at what's happening around these players as well. And Asia Wilson has had to step up this year to make up for some of the other downfalls on the Aces. And I mean, I say downfalls, but ultimately the Aces are still a championship contending team. I do think that we study them and like maybe pick a little bit more because they're just so good. And when they have a little bit of a worse season than they did in the past 2 years, there's a little bit more to kind of like.
It's the standards of a dynasty.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it is, you know.
Hold them to a higher standard. So yeah, that's my vote for Fee. And I mean, yeah, when you flip it like that, it's like, and the Lynx just have a better record. Like, I know that we don't like to, some people kind of judge the, like, why are you judging this on record? But at the same time, the Lynx are likely going to be the 2 seed. The Aces still have a chance to get the 3 seed, but likely will be the 4. So, I mean, if you're going to get nitpicky like that, that's another thing to look at. So, yeah.
Yep. All right. That's why I left that to you guys, because I'm pretty much right with you. All right. I'm going to move on to a race I am super interested in, which is Coach of the Year. There was a awesome piece that was published on Her Hoop Stats just a couple of days ago from Matthew Collar. That was over on September 15th. So if you haven't read that, definitely do. He dives into a lot of, surprise, surprise, the numbers, but then also just the kind of situational historical cases for various coaches of the year. Again, this is something of a preferred team bias showing, but also I think that I generally stay pretty consistent with my stance that Coach of the Year generally, to me, is going to be most well-deserved by a coach that is able to achieve a significant difference between where they're picked and where they finish, in the positive direction, I should say. That's long been my stance in college. to a point, obviously. Things like, running the table, stuff like that, obviously deserves Coach of the Year. But within conferences and things like that, that's always kind of been my default. And so that's why I think that Cheryl Reeve has such a great case this year for how low the Lynx were picked preseason. It's crazy to look back at it. But also, that's not knowing, those picks were without knowing what we've seen now of the way that these players have kind of across the board achieved about as much as we've ever seen out of a lot of them.
Yeah.
Like, statistically, this is probably the best season of Kayla McBride's career. This is one of the best of Courtney Williams. This is probably the best of Elena Smith. Like, I could go down the roster.
Yeah.
It's absurd, the way that she's maximized the talent. So what are your guys' thoughts on the Coach of the Year race?
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to be Cheryl Reeve. Like, that's my pick as well. I think, like, a lot of the points that you were saying, yeah, like, these players are all getting an increase in their, like, personal stats. But I do think a good coach is someone who, like, kind of creates that environment. And I do think, like, given the past, like, 3-4 years of the Lynx where they were literally a lottery team, where they were not very good, literally, like, 1 to 2 years ago, and the fact that they're now a championship contender with a lot of the same roster pieces that they've had is just, I think, a testament to the coaching ability. And you also kind of have to think about the fact that Cheryl Reeve is also making, like, the general manager moves as well. And, like, I think getting Maisha Hines-Allen mid-season was, like, such, for lack of a better term, a slay from Cheryl Reeve. Like, you go, girl. And I think, like, plus coaching the Olympics, in between that, she was the head coach of the USA Olympics team. And, like, the Lynx have been 13-1 since the Olympic break. Like, that's a fantastic record. And, like, yeah, judging from where they were stamped at the beginning of the season, we all thought this was going to be, like, a mid team. They were going to hit maybe, like, the 5 to 8 seed. We thought, like, okay, like, Nafisa's going to be good, but we don't think they're championship contenders. And now they're, like, literally up at the top of the league. Everybody thinks that they're going to be in the finals. They have a really good shot of winning the entire championship, peaking at a great point. I mean, so much of what happens on the court has to do with the coach. And I think with Cheryl Reeve, she's really just, one, like, motivated them beyond the outside noise of, like, how good people think they can be, has also really motivated her players to be the best that they can be. And I do think a lot of it has to do with, like, chemistry and, like, locker room, operations and stuff like that. And I do see a lot of chemistry with the Lynx too. And, like, obviously a coach is going to facilitate that. So I do think it's, like, not only the performance on the court, where we all know Cheryl Reeve is a very, like, defensive minded coach, and she's gonna, this team is a very clear indication of that, of how they win games. But I do think that off the court chemistry and, like, confidence that she's putting in these players, and even just, like, the confidence to say, hey, like, they think we're going to be mid, but let's show them that we're not.
She certainly let us know.
Oh, she let us know.
She's let us know several times now.
She's going to let us know. But yeah, I just think that, yeah, she did the best of just, like, taking what she had and making it great, which in a lot of cases in the W, like, there's a lot of things that you just kind of have to work with. Sometimes we have limited resources, and you just kind of have to work with and make the best out of what you have. So that's my thing. Yeah, and Cheryl's always going to let us know that she knows they can do better, and that she's always had that message, even when they were bad.
Tells it like it is.
Yeah,
every
single time.
Real quick, I'm going to make a point and give props to Claire DeLuca. 2 years ago, Cheryl actually is no longer the general manager as of 2 years ago. So, but I know that they work very closely together. This isn't one of those, like, the GM and the head coach are, like, at each other's throats. They are, from everything I hear, extremely on the same page. But Claire DeLuca is the now 2-year general manager, Des Moines native. So shout out Claire.
There you go. Of course.
Slay from you.
Yeah.
That was a trade. That was a good trade.
Yeah.
And that's just, like, then you take this player who's coming in mid-season and allow, like, work.
Integrate her immediately.
Yeah, like, integrate. She's making an immediate impact. Like, you go, Cheryl. Go on.
Go off, Cheryl.
Go off, Cheryl.
Go off, Cheryl. Now, I completely agree with you. And I think also, I mean, this is just kind of the Lynx episode at this point. But no, I completely agree with y'all. And I think to the point of what we were just saying on the defensive side of the ball as well, it's not all fee. And a lot of that has to do with the organization of this defense now. And I mean, just completely raised the floor of this team. And I mean, really the floor and the ceiling from what we expected just from this roster, the new pieces coming in. I don't want to say they were question marks because like these are solid players that you're bringing in, but just to maximize them to a point that we hadn't seen before on other teams and in other situations. So, I mean, look, that's Cheryl Reeve. We're talking about resumes being stamped. That's Cheryl Reeve, and she's had some talent on some of those teams, just a little bit of talent, but certainly she knows what she's doing, and she's had a masterclass of a season. To me, this is a runaway race. Frankly, I don't think there's any other coach that would be close.
She also wins T-shirt game of the year.
She does.
She's about it. I love it. All right, so guys, last thing we're kind of going to get into here. We've already talked a little bit about the playoffs, and we could get into predictions and stuff, but it's not even set yet.
Yeah, so we don't know yet.
I feel like
we'll save it for next week. We got
next week. Next week we will be recording after the first game has been played in the series, before the second game. It'll publish before a lot of the second game, so we'll be able to get into that. But what I want to ask you is, we are recording today the 17th prior to any game, so there are, for I think every team, 2 games left. And so I want to know what questions you are looking to have answered here in the last 2 games of the regular season going into the playoffs.
Yeah, I got one off rip. Can someone find Sabrina? That's my question. I mean, since returning from injury, it's just been a struggle for her. And against the Lynx, I mean, Stewie had one of her Stewie games, 38 points, and Sabrina shoots 4 for 21. And I think, frankly, there's a very real possibility she's played her way out of a first-team All-WNBA spot.
Yeah.
With this last couple of weeks, especially with recency bias and everything. But she's had her best season by far so far, and it's been a huge part of why the Liberty are the number 1 seed.
She was my early most improved pick, where I said she never would get it, but she should be considered for it. But the struggles lately,
And so that's my biggest thing, where it's like, I mean, because I'm looking right now, right, hypothetically, at a Mystics series, right, and the defensive guards that the Mystics have, and you're already struggling, like, I'm not saying I'm not like predicting an upset, but like, it certainly wouldn't be fun for Salute and Sabrina, especially if Sabrina is struggling. And I don't think it's any secret that, I mean, the Liberty are better when Sabrina's hitting 3. Like, it just helps out everyone on the offensive side of the ball. And so that's my biggest question right now. Where's Sabrina?
Yeah, my question is going to be whether or not the Aces can get the 3 seed, because I want that to happen. I think it'll be fun to have an Aces fever first round, because chaos, storylines, and I think that the Aces are so much more capable than their current status. Like, they had a little bit of a rough patch. That was rough. And like, so that I love, my question always goes around like these end of season scenarios. I love when you're like, this team has to win and then this team has to lose and then this, whatever. Like, I live for that, because I'm like, cool, whatever. This is chaotic. And so I think it's like Connecticut has to lose both of their games, and like and like Las Vegas has to win or something like that for them to get the 3 seed. And then we avoid a Liberty Aces semifinal that way. So I like that, because I would much rather see a Minnesota Aces semifinal, because that would just be chaos. Like, it would be fun. So, that's is like, can the Aces still move up, and like where the seeding ends up and like what the matchups end up being.
My question is very similar to yours, Tyler, which is, can anybody find the Mercury?
Yeah,
I don't.
Too.
They were a team that looked like they could threaten, maybe not as a top tier contender, but for a lot of the first half of the season especially, we were talking for sure a playoff team and, you know, could make some noise, could be almost a dark horse, bordering on not even a dark horse because they were so solid and, you know, players that seemed like, okay, they're still getting their feet under them, they're adjusting to new rules on a team. And especially since the break, things have been rough, to put it mildly. They've lost 6 of their last 8, and not in particularly competitive fashion in a lot of them. I mean, you've got a 13. Yeah, I mean, it's
we're gonna have to get on like the milk cartons and telephone poles and post the missing posters. Because where did everyone go? Just a break.
Like, to me, it was like there was a lot of red flags, and then when you go back-to-back games, you lose by 13 to the Mystics and by 24 to the Storm. It's like, all right, like folks, let's get it together. So hey, the 7 seed or the 2 seeds looking kind of nice right now.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, they have such a great roster. They have so many incredibly capable players, but it is not clicking right now. And so if they can end the season on a really high note, they can have some momentum, especially we know the players on that team. They play with energy. They have a chip on their shoulder. So they can flip a switch and be dangerous really fast. But recently they have not been. So I am extremely curious to see which Mercury team we see ending out the season and going into the postseason.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a huge, like, if Kalia Copper is healthy. Yeah. Because I think this team lives and dies on Kalia Copper. Like, she is. And I mean, maybe Diana Taurasi is going to score 40 on a bum ankle again. That was, like, real ones know. Watching that game live was like one of my top moments in women's basketball, when she was just like, you had that like giant ankle brace and she was just putting them up. Anyway, that was like 2021, but they still won't win without Kalia Copper.
Yeah, it's you can't rely on it. They can win games, but they're not consistent. They're not reliable. It's become extremely obvious that she is kind of the engine of that team. All right, well, We've covered a whole lot of ground today, folks. Thank you so much for joining us once again. This is the Press Break on the Her Hoop Stats Network. So we come out every Wednesday wherever you get your podcasts. Go ahead, if you've been enjoying us, leave us a review wherever you get them. Apple Podcasts, I know, is a popular one. Check us out on YouTube. Drop us a comment. I haven't checked the comments, honestly. I should probably do that, and we'll see if there's anything interesting to respond to there. You can find us on social media. I'm at JSteyz, JSTEYZ. Chelsea Leite is at Chelsea Leite, CHELSEA Tyler, are you just at Tyler DeLuca?
Mine's just at Tyler DeLuca. TYLERDELUCA.
The capital's really important when you're searching for it. All right, well, we will talk to y'all next week. Thanks so much for tuning in.